Hi ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 25th of March 2020. It's not a very good picture here, and I'm gonna drive. Well, I'm just gonna sort of like we're just gonna share my thoughts with you about these times and my feelings, and maybe do a bit of a meditation. So I'm just thinking aloud really, and just wanting to sort of like express some of my feelings about what are happening right now. As I've been so busy, frantic, trying to sort everything out, trying to sort so many things out of my end, because I'm going to be here in England for this. Whatever's going to happen, and I'm still so unclear of what's going to happen. I'm this part of the timeline, like I say, I'm still so unclear of how it's going to affect us, whether it's even going to affect us now, whether it's going to come in for April as I'm possibly expecting. But you've seen in my previous videos, it's very difficult for me to calculate this part, and really, in truth, it's not going to be until we get this next potential flyby that we're going to be able to finally calculate relatively conclusively the exact time of the flyby after this one, because we should potentially have enough data by then with all of these different bits. But potentially we do now. Certainly seen from this end with all this sort of like government, and army mobilisation, that something big is happening here. But I often talk about my father, the channel, but my real father, was a policeman all his life, all his working life. Pretty much all his working life, he always had this idea that there would be this movement before any big change. He's always seen this big change coming in himself, and he's always been of a mind that what he calls like the 666 will come in first of all, and it will be a massive kind of like new banking system that will be some kind of like electronic chip sort of thing that so many of us have kind of seen as the kind of like most likely kind of route on the table, especially when you're hearing things like Bill Gates, all his story, how he wants to reduce the population from going on to 8 billion down to 5 billion with vaccinations, and not really, he has a million different ideas of what he means by that, but it's still kind of like a cough, kind of like there's nearly half of the population. It's more, nearly half the population. So I just don't know what to expect by that, and certainly, like I say, when I look at sort of like you remember in the last video I made, I deleted the time it takes for the exact time it takes for Jupiter to go right round whatever it orbits, which I'm assuming is planet X, not our sun. But the exact time it takes, 11.89 years away from the 20th of January 2023, which is ironically when supposedly the official kind of the official perihelion of Jupiter, the closest point Jupiter will be to the sun itself, would occur. The official story is, the 20th of January 2023. If I deduct 11.89 years from that day, from the 20th of January 2023, it comes to the basically 11th of March 2011. The exact time Fukushima occurred, and so we get this symmetry in all of this. And this isn't going to be a video with epic shots, and let's face it, I have given you no end of epic shots as we have moved through this massive journey of chartering this, since I've been really accurately chartering it since 2015, I guess. And I've been dedicated to this, haven't I? This incredible pattern, and like I say, this area here is this part we come to. And where I'm going to want to go with this is a little bit is we're going to do that. Remember I said we'll do a meditation at some point. I want to talk you through building your own meditation, your own point of connection in this, because your point of connection is very, very, very powerful to you. in this time because of the electromagnetic energies, the fluxes. You want to be really, you want your soul to be really rooted in your state of being. And I want to take you to the rich, creamy, most powerful electromagnetic energy that ties into the core of you, where that lies. And we're going to do a meditation to join that space and to remember that this kind of like this relationship I talked about with I'm trying to think of the man's name, not Galileo, not Copernicus. You probably know the man's name I mean, and it'll come to me in a second. But his 3 rules that I brought forward, and I've completely forgotten his name, and I've it will come to me in a sec. I do that. I have complete blind spots. I can remember so much phenomenal data, and yet the things I'm just thinking about here and now. His name will come to me. Apologies about that. But he was ironically at the same time as Copernicus and Galileo, at the same time that we discovered the first dwarf planet. If I keep saying it, his name will obviously come to me in 1596, and the sort of like basically the same time as the calendars changed. The calendar changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, the same time as the crazy storm that destroyed the entire Spanish Armada in 1588. You know what I mean? 2 years, but like 2 years after that after that great storm, was the first time William Shakespeare play was performed. Just to give you an idea that the sort of like that Shakespeare, the whole story, the first story, the Great Temple of Tempest, opens with Ariel that's controlled by Prospero, and ironically, all of those characters in the play are the are now the moons of, I think, is it Neptune or Uranus? I think it's Uranus, but it might be Neptune. But there's no, they know this big story. They know this big cycle that I put out, I showed you, that exists on the 50p coin. They know all about that, and you know all about this now, and we all kind of know all about it. It's just this. What story we're going to go into now? Whether we're going to do this big connection and do it at this connection to the galactic center ourselves, or we're going to have a kind of third party be our connection and us be servant to that kind of like that third party, that we place something in between that connection and we take that connection out of our orbital mechanics, and we have only the kind of like the model of the still his name has completely vanished from my mind, and so hopefully you might so it's going to turn a bit of one of those kind of like quizzes. Who is Dave talking about? Who does he know he's talking about? It will come to me in no doubt. Sort of like, but nonetheless, this idea of orbital mechanics built around 2 bodies that I explored in my last video. If we can understand that our Sun and Planet X are both independently orbiting the Milky Way, and it would seem that one is potentially, it's so difficult to say, do they change each other's? Imagine 2 planets, as I explored again in the last video, 2 objects going round and around and around. Imagine sort of like imagine someone walking around you and them holding your hand as they turned around you. That would mean that they were locked in a kind of a circular orbit around you. They couldn't be going off on their own direction. They're locked in a circular orbit around you because you're holding hands. They can't sort of like go off and spin. Not to say they can't spin like Earth spins on its axis, but what is it to be locked into an orbit where you're going round and around, and what is it to be locked into an orbit where you're running parallel with something else locked into this other orbit? And like I say, I show you kind of like I show you a visualization of that, Picture walking along, two people walking along in kind of virtually a straight line, but you're orbiting. You keep walking in the same direction, but you move around each other as you walk. Now picture that, trying to picture that relationship as going round the galactic center. Because if we can go around that galactic center, what I want you to do is I want you to go round and picture yourself in this tertiary movement. Like a helix going around, and picture you're walking along with someone and you're going round them and round them, but you're not orbiting around them. They're as much orbiting around you, and you are still just going in this. You picture yourself not going in a straight line, but you kind of are going in a straight line, a much bigger arc as you go around the Milky Way, our galactic center. Try and do some visualizations, visualizing that, and then when you've got that and you feel like you're going along, I want you to do bank hard right turn, and I want you to try and see where you're taking a hard right turn to the center of, and where you are on the planet when you do your hard right turn, to go straight into the center of the Milky Way. Try and do it, try and get a SolarSystemScope.com up and try and look at where you are on the aspect, whether you're down in Australia and you're sitting, from the perspective of north and south of the ecliptic, you're sitting right there on the bottom, you're kind of upside down, you know what I mean? You're really depending on gravity down there, because if it wasn't for gravity you'd be falling off, or electromagnetic energy, or whatever the force you want to see that's holding you into place. That force, I want you to remember that force, because it's that force that we're going to be using through our meditation. So remember, wherever you are, if you're on the side of the earth, and the only thing that's stopping you falling off right now is that force that's pulling you there. And if you're on the top and the whole planet is moving so fast but you're just being stuck there, remember that force. Feel that force in your whole body. Maybe lift your arms a little bit and just help yourself feel that weight, the energy that is holding you there. Tune into that energy, tune it into your whole body as you tune into this journey, and work out where you are on the globe. If you're up in America, you're going to be sitting quite high, but maybe you're sort of midway where England, you're kind of like near to the still quite near to the North Pole in actual fact, but obviously not that near. But we're in the upper part of the northern hemisphere of the globe, really, up here in England, and same with North America and that sort of stuff. It's really, it's you go down to the Pyrenees and you'd be sort of like nearly at that midway point, not as in the equatorial line, but the halfway to that sort of thing. But so picture where you are. Picture the sun rising. Picture the earth turning and the sun rising. The earth turns. If you were to see the way the earth turns as it goes around the sun, it's kind of like it'd be like a wheel rolling along. It moves in the fashion you'd kind of expect in your mind's eye as it moves along, like it's rolling along on rollers or something like that. It moves in the same direction as it's rolling around, so it's very easy to do. And the moon's the same, and the moon obviously spinning round as you go around. Remember where the moon's energy in this is, because it will amplify the energy and everything else like that. And just talking about the moon's energy, because we've just had an earthquake in Croatia just while we were coming into the new moon state, when the moon was between us and the sun, and we just had an earthquake, and that's very telling, which means that it's our first indicator Now that could be the going out phase of the flyby that we had coming in for around about January. So that could still be affecting us. So it's very difficult to tell, but certainly come the full moon, as we approach the full moon, the next coming full moon, and you know, for the earthquake that happened in Croatia, that's an earthquake that's happening very near the big fault line that divides the Eurasian plate from the African plate. And we know from Dutch Sim's videos how energy works, and for energy to get up here, it's got to come via that line. And that's where we're headed. That's where kind of like on the 26th of April 1986, when Chernobyl went bang, and we had the big earthquake in Dharamsala on the same day. And that line runs all the way down. It runs all the way down under Ukraine. It runs underneath the sort of like the Mediterranean Ocean. And that's how all the earthquakes are going to come into this European area. That's what's going to be the trigger of all of sort of like Stromboli and kind of like Etna and everything else like that. That's what's going to sort of bring earthquakes into the UK and that sort of stuff. They're all going to come down that line if this is the aspect of this new flyby coming in. And these are telltale signs. It's still too early to tell, but it's exactly what I'm expecting. You remember sort of like 2018, we can go back to this meditation on shake, but remember going back to 2018, the volcano went off south of the Equatorian line. It went off in like I say, on the 4th of May 2018. It went off on Kilauea. Started pumping out magma like nothing before, like nothing we'd ever seen before. This wasn't the result of any CME. This was a 6-week non-stop pumping out of magma. This happened south. And then if we go back 2 years before to 2016, and now the dates don't match up, but maybe there's a reason, because Jupiter was so much further away from its most affecting point. But nonetheless, on the 22nd of November 2016 in Christchurch in New Zealand, do you remember the whole, well, not the whole plate, but you know, an aspect of the plate that is New Zealand, and that specific part of Christchurch jumped up 2 meters. You were standing on the beach and the land behind you jumped up 2 meters. Imagine if that had been reversed and the oceans had dropped. There would have been a massive tsunami. There would have been a massive tsunami, but it didn't work like that because the plate that is New Zealand is the plate because of its buoyancy. Invariably, these plates are much buoyant than the basalt crust, which is what magma is when it's solidified. The basalt crust is it's made of a denser material, and it's not nearly as buoyant to say sort of things like granite, which rise to the surface. And so when the earth shakes, often these things rise out, and they have these perfectly, as they come, as the edges, though the edges are all jagged, they're actually smooth all the way down. So it just looks like parts of a jigsaw puzzle or something, or a big edge of a really, really complex jigsaw puzzle. But and you've already seen that, you know, you've seen that in the big mountain range that comes down I went to Colorado, you know. I went up to see I can't remember the lovely video maker's name that I went up to see when I was in America. Oh my goodness, what's his name? I haven't seen him for ages. He's a lovely man. He lives up in Colorado and makes these videos about, so it's a channel, incredible channel. Anyway, blessings to you. Sorry, your name was gone. If it comes back, it's the same as the kind of like the guy's name that's sort of like around about the same time as Copernicus and sort of like and Galileo, and I completely forgot his name, and it's kind of what the video is all about. How hilarious is that? It's gone. But anyway, it's a perfect time to drive down, because the other thing, I've just freed up a little bit more time because they've just cancelled the MOTs, and I've been trying to get my truck through the MOT, my car through the MOT, my motorbike, so I can move stuff around, get stuff everywhere I need to get it, and that sort of stuff, and just try and get prepped. Everything on my level here, because for me this is real. But I also have to accept what my father says, and says that, son, you're still too early for this. This is not when the big flyby is going to come in. But I'm obviously looking at it thinking, well, I don't know. I know that I don't know, but I'm pretty sure because of 2016, because of 2018, when you guys were all the ones shouting out, Dave is coming in, and I was convinced it wasn't, and then bang, it came in with, like I say, Kilauea. That was kind of like in the midway point. The New Zealand ones were south, and you know, I'm expecting hot effects above the above the ecliptic or the equator line on this cycle. I'm expecting it to about 3/4 way, where basically where the kind of line that I'm on, that's where I'm expecting it to come in for this cycle. I don't know where it's going to be exactly along that, but I'm expecting a lot of these areas to become very volcanic, because it's going to pull on the magma below, but I don't know what part of the globe it's going to affect. Although suddenly there goes the earthquake in Croatia, and honestly, it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. But it's what I'm kind of like. It's heartbreakingly kind of like. It's heartbreaking to say it, but I have to kind of like, we can't put blinkers on and throw belief at this, because we can't handle the story. That's how we fail. We've got to be willing to look at the absolute truth of what's happening here, and what Bill Gates is openly saying here, and which way this is going. We're all just looking. For me, I haven't got any answers about what's going on here, but if I listen to what my father's always said, my real father, and his whole angle on it, he might be right about the 2023, that it is later. It actually fits exactly with their kind of perihelion point of Jupiter, which is actually the perigee point, the closest point of the furthest kind of like orbiting object orbiting moon of Jupiter is in perigee to Earth on that exact same day, potentially, which is, like I say, you just only have to kind of like take that day minus kind of like the duration of Jupiter exactly, and it comes to the 11th of March 2011, and considering 3 nuclear reactors went into meltdown on that day, considering the degradation and the damage and the whole destruction that was caused by that, and the cancers and the pollution was caused by that, can we just sweep those sort of figures? I'm not making that up. That's just utterly, is that just a coincidence, or is that absolute cosmic perfection? Is that what they really know is coming in, and this is what they're all saved for? Is this the big time? Which is maybe the 11th is going to be. Don't forget, the 11th of March 2011 was the point, not when it was closest to us. That was the point in Jupiter's penultimate cycle around whatever it orbits, when it came closest to the Earth in that cycle, its penultimate cycle. That was the biggest seismic astronomical point in its range during that time. And by logic, the 20th of January 2023 is the next aspect, is the next point, one full cycle ahead. But we have to remember that Jupiter is moving, we are moving through the ecliptic plane of our true binary system. That we are moving through the effective orbital plane of Jupiter and of Jupiter and Saturn. Now our Earth is orbiting on the angle of all of the other planets orbiting around that. But so we still see it. It looks to us as always as if, like I say, that these planets are going around us. But this angle that we actually orbit as we go around the sun is held in place by the ecliptic plane of planet X's ecliptic, which is the same as Jupiter and Saturn. I don't know if that can make sense. You have two, one like that and one like that, and even though it's like that, our sun's orbit cutting through the ecliptic plane of the dwarf planet that Jupiter and Saturn both orbit on. Our Earth sits plane, which is that of the dwarf planet. And that is why we experience the motion of Jupiter, of Saturn and Jupiter occupying the same plane, what we think is our solar system's ecliptic plane. I'm of a mind at the moment. It's still, you know, I've given you so much evidence now. We're just like looking at aspects of it, and you know, I'm adding aspects to it, and it's one of those times that, like I say, now when we come back to positioning where we are, picture if the sun is setting and you're sitting on the earth and you're looking at the sun setting. You're kind of like, the earth is rolling round and you're literally rolling into the sort of like dark side of the earth, looking out to the sort of like all the stars in the darkness beyond the sun. And if you're sitting there looking on the sunrise, you're literally just coming out of that dark side and you're just coming to the sun, looking at the sun on the horizon. Try and see yourself moving out away from that place where you are as you sit there in your meditation. Try to come out in what direction would you want to come out? Let's assume that our sun is not just going round the Milky Way, it's heading these are the bits of information that we are still struggling. There's a bit of homework here for everyone, if anyone wants to make a little bit of effort on this, is to try and ascertain the exact direction our sun is moving. I had it the other day and I can't seem to find it, and I spent several days just keep looking back trying to find that as a statistic, and I've been struggling. So but try and picture that relationship of not so much you orbiting planet X, but like I say, you're orbiting the Milky Way and you're in this relationship with planet X, and this force that's holding you in place is intertwined not just with your connection with the sun, but it's our sun's connection with planet X, and it's the two of those connections in this binary relationship both charging forward, and it's their charging forward relationship with the energy that is pulling in from the Milky Way. I want you to really, really try to become aware of that energy. To become really aware of that energy and that connection. To switch that off. That connection to the hub of the Milky Way. And as you make your journey, and as you begin your connection to that space, before you take your right turning, as you're going round and you're just getting ready to take your right turning and head straight in, and you're going to do an immediate right turning, it's going to be a you're going to shoot right straight in there. You're not going to dilly-dally. It's not going to be a slow journey. You're going to plunge instantaneously into the Milky Way. And before you make your journey, I want you to think about your intentions right now. And just qualify those intentions in every way, just to get yourself excited so that it's real. You know, think about, have you got any bad intentions for anyone? Are you trying to do anything to really screw anyone over? Is there anything really dark going on in your life that you're trying to give anyone a really hard time, or really trying to ruin their day or slow their lives down or make their lives miserable or something? You might be struggling with your partner and everything else like that and in this thing, but are you trying to hold her back, or are you trying to hold him back? Are you trying to hold someone back in any way? Are you doing anything that is seriously bad, that you might not be doing the best you can with the whole ecological front, and you're being forced to buy all this stuff and locked into this relationship in this big economic story as it is at the moment, and tied to one way or another? But beyond that, are you just trying to muddle through and trying to do the best you can, or is there any dark intention that you really have? I want you to really think about that. And if you haven't, I want you to really think about that and celebrate that. Celebrate that. Remember that. Come into that. Many of you are on the QAnon and all this sort of tip. I don't know if it's complete psyops, black ops, whatever it is, that Trump's almost makes Trump the second coming, but I suppose he's clearing out the swamp and blah 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 blah, and whatever the story is, you might be right, you might be wrong, but what are your intentions in that story? You got any bad intentions to bring about bad stuff on anyone else out there? And when people are talking about that, if you don't agree with that, or they're on someone like me on a Planet X story, and looking at this whole, my whole book was much more about the economic play out that is happening now. That's why I wrote Laughing Gas, because at that time, that's how I saw the whole wall and the whole way in which kind of wage slavery was pieced together to create this dynamic that we've created. And this wall that we've arrived at, especially intellectually, where with the type of weapons and type of kind of like biological weapons that we have reached a wall where if we touch war with that type of technology, we lose the whole thing just like that. It's kind of like